Ladies and gentlemen, formally, a formal welcome to Daily Power Parsha. This week's Torah portion is Vayeira, and I am pulling it up and sharing my screen right now as we speak. We're going to jump in. We did not finish. Last time we met was Wednesday. We're now having Fridays off. So last time we met was Wednesday, and on Wednesday we didn't exactly finish reading number 4. So let's jump into 4. We got a lot. Last story we read, it was about Lot and his daughters. And let's jump into Genesis chapter 20, verse 1. Okay? Here's a new story. Remember, at this point, Avram is older, Sarah is older, she has still not had a child. They have been blessed recently by an angel. Well, a few things happened. Avram's name was changed. Sarah's name was changed. Extra letter Hey for both of them. Or letter Hey for both of them. And Avram had a bris. He had a circumcision. And the angel promised, Hashem promised through the angel that he would have a child to be named Yitzchak. Okay, so that we know. And then Sodom was overturned. Lot was saved. Okay, that kind of like pulled us away from the Avram story. Now we're back. And Avram and Abraham traveled from there to the land of the south. And he dwelt between Kadesh and between Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Avram said about Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." Once again, he pulls the sister card. Remember, he did that when they went down to Egypt. He does that again, traveling into a foreign land. And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So like Pharaoh, Abimelech the king takes Sarah. And God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night, and he said to him, "Behold, you are going to die, because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a married woman." So God FYIs Abimelech, saying, "Oh, that woman that you took, yeah, she's a married woman." Verse 4, the Torah tells us, Abimelech had not come near to her. So nothing happened. He didn't even try at that point. And Abimelech said to God, "O Lord, will you kill even a righteous nation?" By the way, this is the second time that God gets called out in this week's Torah portion about, punishing the righteous. Avram said something to him, "Will you kill the righteous with the wicked?" What about all the righteous people? Until God said there aren't righteous. But Abimelech said, "You're telling me I'm going to die? I'm righteous." Did he not, verse 5, did Abraham not say to me, "She's my sister"? And she said, "He's my brother. With the innocence of my heart and with the purity of my hands have I done this." Oh, you want to break out a violin? I'm kidding. No, I don't want to be mean. He's saying I'm innocent. He said she's my sister. She said he's my brother. I had no idea she's a married woman. And God said to him in a dream, "I too know that you did this with the innocence of your heart. And I too have withheld you from sinning to me." In other words, I helped prevent you from sinning. "Therefore, I did not let you touch her. And now return the man's wife, because he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, know that you will surely die, you and all that is yours." Abimelech arose early in the morning, and he summoned all his servants, and he spoke all these words in their ears. Basically, Abimelech gathered his staff, and he said, "This is what happened last night with my dream. This is what's going on." And the men were very frightened. In other words, like at this point, everyone's like, how do we get out of this situation? Abimelech summoned Abraham, and he said to him, verse 9, "What have you done to us? And what have I sinned against you, that you brought upon me and my kingdom a great sin? These that are not done, you have done to me." Basically, Abimelech takes Avram to task. He says, "You set me up. I don't want to have to deal with this. God is now telling me that if I don't return her, everyone's gonna die, and everything, you and your whole household. I need this in my life." And Abimelech said to Avram, "What did you see that you did this thing? Like, why'd you do this?" Avram said, verse 11, "For I said, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife." Look at that line. He says, between you and me, or between me and you, it's like what? How God-fearing are you typically, right? Would you hesitate to kill me and take my wife? No. "And also, indeed, she is my sister." It's not a lie. She is my sister. But not literally. Hold on. Not literally. But she's a relative. The daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. How come I don't remember this? Let me toggle Rashi for a second. Let's just double check. Hey, listen, what happens in Gerar stays in Gerar. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying. All right. I don't know. Haran was born of a different mother than Avram. Okay, I don't know. Somehow a relative, but not exactly literally a sister. We have to look at the whole family tree to figure that out. Either way, let's move on. So, and it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, "This is your kindness which you shall do with me. Whither we come, say about me, he is my brother." In other words, the moment we began traveling, this became our MO. We would pretend to be brother and sister. Fine. So Avram basically says three things. First of all, I know that this place is not so God-fearing. So maybe not you, but maybe your guards or officials or whatever, servants who want to impress you, would kill me and then deliver her to you. Number one. Number two, technically there is a family relation there, some sort of family relation. So I said she's my sister. And number three, it's not, don't take it personally. We've done this everywhere we've traveled. This is the way we travel. We pretend to, we say that we're brother and sister. Fine. So 3 points. Avimelech, verse 14. Avimelech took flocks and cattle and men servants and maid servants, and he gave them to Avram, and he restored to him his wife Sarah. And Avimelech said, "Here is my land before you. Wherever it pleases, you may dwell." So he was nice. You know what? Let's live in peace. And to Sarah he said, "Behold, I've given 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother." I guess he's still calling him his brother. "Behold, it is to you a covering of the eyes for all who are with you, and with all you shall contend." Hold on. "Behold, it is to you a covering of the eyes for all who are with you, and with all you shall contend." Okay. All right, fine. We'll get back to that. Maybe. It's verse 17. "And Avram prayed to God, and God healed Avimelech and his wife and his handmaids, and they gave birth." Basically, what happened was, according to the commentaries, and you see here, they gave birth. Basically, the ailment that they had, if I'm not mistaken, was that all of their orifices were clogged. In other words, like nothing, everything, all holes of the body, so to speak, were clogged. So God healed them, and things opened up, and they gave birth. It says Avimelech and his wife and his handmaids, and they gave birth. I hope it's not Avimelech himself. Although in the continuation of that story, all the names are mentioned. I'm just joking. I'm just saying that it seems like there was a blessing of pathways opening. For the Lord, here we say, for the Lord had shut every womb of Avimelech's household because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. So every womb was closed, and then it was opened again. Fine. Chapter 21. This is the big moment we've all been waiting for a long time. Genesis chapter 21. "And the Lord remembered Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had spoken. And Sarah conceived," Mazel Tov, "and bore a son to Avram," Mazel Tov, "in his old age, at the time of which God had spoken to him." Remember, he said, next year, in a year's time, this will happen. Well, at the appointed time, she gave birth to a son. "And Avram and Abraham named his son who had been born to him, whom Sarah bore to him, Isaac." If you recall, that was the angel. That's what the angel said. "And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him." This is the first milah, the first brit milah, first circumcision that was done on the 8th day per God's command. This was the first opportunity to do it. Ishmael was already 13 years old. Abraham was 99 years old. By the way, at this point, Abraham is 100, Sarah is 90, and they have a child. Talk about modern medicine. Talk about ancient blessings. Okay, chapter 21, verse 5. "And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made joy for me. Whoever hears will rejoice over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? For I have borne a son to his old age. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on that day that Isaac was weaned." It says, by the way, that at this great feast were all the great kings and nobility, because Avram was well known at that point, including our favorite character in Genesis. Well, one of our favorite characters, who always seems to appear in stories, can never get away from this guy. And I'm referring to Og, the giant. Og, the jolly green giant, maybe he wasn't green. The Og, the giant, who survives the flood, hanging onto the ark, who's the guy who tells Abraham that Lot was captured in this war against Sodom, who's the guy who ultimately fights with the Jewish people and with Moses and is killed. Anyway, this Og comes to this party, and the Medrash says that he told that everyone was celebrating Avram and his son Isaac, and Og said, "You're celebrating, you're so happy, with one little finger, with one pinky, I could crush this guy." That's what he tells him. What a way to spice up a party. I mean, you're invited to a party, you're eating the past hors d'oeuvres, and what are you saying? You're threatening the child of you're threatening the life of the child who we're celebrating, the coming of age ceremony. What is this? By the way, when was this? Some say it was at 3 years old, or 2 or 3 years old. Some say it was a bar mitzvah celebration. Different opinions as to what it means that the great feast on the day he was weaned. I mean, weaned literally means, the day that you're no longer nursing. But it could mean, a little bit older than that, or weaned from kind of childhood into a more mature place. So that's why some say it was a bar mitzvah celebration. Either way, Og is there, and he makes a big thing. And Avram, and the Medrash says that at that point God said, we'll see who has the last laugh. Og, you're saying that you can crush Isaac with your finger, we'll see who has the last laugh. And the way it's explained in Kabbalah and Hasidic philosophy is, it wasn't a physical thing as much as it was a spiritual conversation. Og was saying to Avram, Og had always told Avram that your way of monotheism and righteousness, it's not sustainable, give it up. You don't even have any progeny, you don't have an offspring, so give it up. And then Avram had a child, so that was a celebration. So Og said, with my little finger I could crush him. In other words, it's like there's no sustainability. You have these like weird values and these spiritual notions, but put your little kid, vulnerable kid, out into the world, and that's it. They're done. They're going to be swept away with culture, with society, with difference of with the masses, what everyone else thinks. And God says, we'll see who has the last laugh. And honestly, we're still here today. And all the Ogs have come and gone and said, there's no way this is going to continue. And 3,500 years later, we're still here, and we're still studying it, and we still consider ourselves the children of Abraham and Sarah. And the legacy lives on. So again, the notion of influences, trying to say to the Jew, come on, give it up. Why are you being so different? It's not a new thing. It's an Og thing. OG. Original. It's an OG, that's what the kids say today. It's an original thought. An original claim. Let's continue. That's a little bit of a medrash in Kabbalah on verse 8. Verse 9, and Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, this is Ishmael, making merry. And that's a euphemism for doing things that weren't nice. Idolatry and bloodshed, and very negative things. And Sarah said to Avram, drive out this handmaid and her son, for the son of this handmaid shall not inherit with my son with Isaac. Basically, you now have Ishmael seems went into a slightly negative way, and Sarah says, no, send them out. Hagar and Ishmael, get rid of them. But the matter greatly displeased Abraham concerning his son. God said to Abraham, be not displeased concerning the lad and concerning your handmaid. Listen to this. Whatever Sarah tells you, hearken to her voice. For an Isaac will be called your seed. And from then on, we're told the Torah sets the stage for men listening to their wives. Right? Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her voice, and that's it. That's it. Done. You think it's a bad idea? It doesn't matter. Just listen to what she says, and you're always safer that way. That's a rule of thumb, again, from the Torah. And by the way, Jewish women know this, and they're not afraid to use it. Anyway, all right, let's continue. Verse 13. But also the son of the handmaid I will make into a nation. Don't worry, Ishmael will also be made into a nation, because he is your seed, after all. And Abraham early in the morning, he took bread and a leather pouch of water. He gave them to Hagar. He placed them on her shoulder and the child, and he sent her away. And she went and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. And the water was depleted from the leather pouch, and she cast the child under one of the bushes. And she went and sat down from afar about the distance of 2 bow shots, and she said, "Let me not see the child's death." And she sat from afar and raised her voice and wept. Basically, she thought they were going to die of thirst. Her child was going to die. They had no more water. They're in the desert. They're done for. 17. And God heard the lad's voice, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is troubling you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the lad's voice in the place where he is. Rise, pick up the lad, and grasp your hand upon him, for I shall make him into a great nation." And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Should have just looked. There was a well of water there the whole time. And she went and filled the pouch with water and gave the lad to drink. And God was with the lad, and he grew, and he dwelt in the desert and became an archer. Look at that. And he dwelt in the desert of Paran, and his mother took for him a wife from the land of Egypt. Okay. So I need to point out a few very, very important things in this story. Number one, Abraham is clearly hesitant to send away his son and his son's mother, Hagar, the handmaid. Nonetheless, he does it. He sends them with the provisions run out. Notice this verse 15, which we read. Water was depleted from the pouch, so she cast the child under one of the bushes. That's weird. If the water is depleted from the pouch, cast away the pouch. Right, you finish drinking a bottle of water, what do? You take a person, you throw them away? No, you throw away the water bottle. So what's the throwing away the kid? So here's a deeper message and a cautionary note from the Torah. And that is, what happens when we feel like resources are depleted? What goes first? Oftentimes, education goes first. We say we can't give our kids an education, a Jewish education, whether it's a day school or a Sunday school, because the money or whatever, the resources aren't there. The message is, figure out the resources, but don't cast a child under one of the bushes. So that's an insight, again, a non-literal insight into verse 15. Next, verse 17. The angel says to her, "Don't be afraid. God has heard the lad's voice in the place where he is." What does it mean in the place where he is? That means that God does not judge someone based on what they will do in the future, even though God knows the future. God judges us when we pray and answers us where we are at that moment. For example, on Yom Kippur, we make all good resolutions and we ask for a good year. Hashem does not peer into the future and say, "You're pledging now that you're never going to do that thing again. I see you doing it again. There's no way." Like, that's it. Not happening. No, God doesn't judge us like that. If we're sincere in the moment, then God gives us that blessing. And that's what it means, Ba'asher Husham. God listened to the boy's voice as he was there. Yes, he would grow up to be an archer, Ishmael, right, and do not so positive things. Eventually, by the way, he did Shuvah. He repented at the end of his life. But he lived a not so holy life his whole life. Nonetheless, God saved him based on where he was at that moment. Next point. And I mentioned this, kind of parenthetically when we went through it, that the well of water was there, but she didn't see it. God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. The implication is that it was there, but she didn't see it. This is true in life. Sometimes we panic. Sometimes we get so anxious that we don't see the solution right in front of us. Are you with me on this? The water runs out. She panics. She pushed the kid under the bushes. She runs away. "Oh, I can't bear to see it." And she's like all distraught. And meanwhile, there's water right there. But because of the state that she's in, because of the inner state, she can't, not interstate, that's something else, but the inner state of being, she can't see it. And that's, again, a lesson in life, to try to stay calm in the face of adversity, because that's how we can find solutions and not just get overwhelmed. Make sense? Okay, let's see how much we can do of reading 6 and 7. Oh, it's actually not so long. Okay, let's do this quickly. Now it came to pass at the time that Avimelech, the aforementioned king of Gerar, remember the guy who took Sarah? Okay, Avimelech and Fichol, his general, said to Avram, saying, "God is with you in all that you do." Let me tell you what's going on here. Basically, Avimelech, the king, realizes that God is with Avram. There was a physical ailments that happened when he took Sarah because he thought it was his sister, whatever. He realizes that this guy is not to be messed with. He wants to make a covenant with Avram, a peace treaty. We're all going to get along with each other, and that's it. Okay, so here's what it is. And now, verse 23, "Swear to me," says Avimelech, "by God, that you will not lie to me or to my son, or to my grandson, according to the kindness that I have done with you, you shall do with me, and with the land wherein you have sojourned. In other words, let's be friends. And Avram said, I will swear. Deal. Let's be friends. And Avram contended with Avimelech. He complained to Avimelech about a well of water that the servants of Avimelech had forcibly seized. Basically, Avram had dug a well, and Avimelech's servants had taken it. So they're making this treaty. He's like, by the way, we're friends now. I should probably tell you about what your servants did. And Avimelech said, I do not know who did this thing. Neither did you tell me, nor did I hear of it until today. So listen, let's be friends, but you got to be open communication. You got to tell me. The implication is after that, he righted the wrong. Let's continue. What we see here, by the way, is, let me give you an insight before we go too much further. Right? Why does Avimelech want to create peace with Avram, with Abraham? Because he says, God is with you in all that you do. And that's a message for us also. And that is, we're respected by others when we remain committed to our commitments. Sometimes we think that in order to gain respect, we have to fit in, we have to assimilate, we have to be like everyone else. This story reminds us that others respect us when we're proud of who we are and our uniqueness. Avram never sells out. And it's because of that that Avimelech respects him. Let's continue. Verse 27. And Avram took flocks and cattle, gave them to Avimelech, and they both formed a covenant, peace treaty. And Abraham placed 7 ewe lambs by themselves. And Avimelech said to Avram, what are these 7 ewe lambs which you have placed by themselves? And he said, for these 7 ewe lambs you shall take from my hand, in order that it be to me for a witness that I dug this well. Still about the well. Still stuck on the well. All right, take this for me, but then I get the well. All right, fine, you get the well. Therefore, he named that place Be'er Sheva. Be'er Sheva means, Be'er means well. Sheva is like Shavua, which means an oath. It's the well of oath. For there they both swore about the well. And they formed a covenant in Be'er Sheva. By the way, Be'er Sheva, right? How do you pronounce that in English? Be'er Sheva? How would you pronounce? Be'er Sheva? All right, whatever. Okay. That's where it was. And Avimelech and Phichol his general arose, and they returned to the land of the Philistines. And he planted, here we go. And Abraham and Sarah planted an Eshel in Beersheba, and Abraham called there in the name of the Lord, the God of the world. And Avram dwelt in the land of the Philistines, Avimelech's territory, for many days, which means years. Okay, what's this Eshel? Eshel means an orchard. He planted an orchard. Abraham and Sarah's bed and breakfast, B&B. They had an orchard with food and a tent that was open, and there he called in the name of God, which means that he taught everyone. Not only he called, but he caused others to call. He taught monotheism when people came in to his bed and breakfast. Eshel also in Hebrew is an acronym for Achila, Shtia, and Lina, which means eating. Again, Aleph for Achila, Shin which means eating, Shin for Shtia, which means drinking, and Lamed for Lina, which means place to sleep. So Abraham and Sarah planted an Eshel, meaning they built a Chabad house with beds, a place to come and learn and eat and rest. And that's how Avram did his thing. Final reading. Oh, we can't do it. Way too long. Way too long. I'm going to summarize. We're not going to do it inside. This is the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. The greatest test of Avram's character. The greatest test of Isaac. Yeah. So what's going on? Okay, I'm stopping sharing because we're not going to read it inside. I'm going to tell you the story outside, and we're going to close it out. We all know this story, right? God says to Avram, take your son and bring him up to the mountain, to the place that I will show you, and bring him up as an offering. And Avram says, okay, that's your will, that's your command. I'll do it. The next morning, saddles up, takes his son. By the way, Isaac was 37 or 40 years old at that time. He wasn't a kid. Sometimes it's depicted in art as a young boy not knowing what's going on. He saw the knife, He wasn't, okay, he was 37 or 4, somewhere around there. I forget which one. You're saying 40, Ray?
No, I'm saying 36 is what I thought.
36. I think it was 37. Yeah. Because at that time, I think Rebecca was born in, okay. So right around 37. So an older guy already, his son. He goes and he begins the journey and he arrives at the mountain, and famously he brings him up on the altar and has the knife, and God, the angel of God says, no, what do you do with the knife? I told you to bring him up as an offering. You brought him up, take him down. That's it. Bring him up, take him down. And this is the binding of Isaac, and this is the great test of Avram. Would he be willing to offer his son if God asked? And the answer was yes. Now, for many people, myself included, the story is a little bit bittersweet. And I'll tell you what I mean. It's like, yeah, it shows his willingness to follow God, but it's kind of dark, isn't it? Like, what was he willing to do? That's pretty, like, is that a good thing? If God said to do that, would that be a good... And this is the same Avram, by the way, who defends Sodom. When God says, I'm taking out Sodom, Avram's like, you can't do that. But when he says, offer your son, he's like, sure, no problem. Early tomorrow morning, we're heading out. I'll bring the knife. What is that? How does that make sense? Comes to foreigners, he's like, not happy, not on my watch. And his own mishpacha, his own child, going ahead with it. What's going on? Well, there's many different approaches. And it's really such a big subject. It's hard to get into fully right now, given the time and the fact that it's Erev Shabbos. So I'm going to give you a very, very brief treatment of this. Number one, when it came to Sodom, God said it was a punishment. God said I'm destroying the cities as a punishment. Avram said, punishment? Let's find the justification. When it came to Isaac, God didn't say it's a punishment, it's an offering. So what are you going to say? Right? Offer something else? In other words, it's an ascendant. I don't know what the right word is. It's an ascendant. It's an uplifting thing. It's like the highest, it might be thought of as the highest form of elevation. It's an elevation offering of Isaac. It's not a punishment. You with me on the difference between the two stories? So that's number one. It needs to be very, very clear, because a lot of people, right, a lot of us, when we hear that story, it's like something feels like completely off. Again, when God says, I'm going to punish, then immediately Avram, Moses, everyone springs into action. Punish, take it easy. The lawyer comes out, right? The inner lawyer comes out. But God didn't say, I don't like Isaac, or Isaac messed up, and therefore, God didn't say Isaac messed up, so therefore, take us. No, God says, lift him up even higher as an elevation offering. That's one thing. Next, and this is the final point that I'm going to say, and maybe next week we'll pick it up, because the story really, next week's Torah portion follows this story, so maybe we'll give a little bit more time to this next week, because right now it's a little bit tight on time for me. So, but very quickly, you and I are horrified by the notion of somebody following God if God said, bring your son as an offering. Horrified. What kind of parent would do that? But I need to tell you, the reason why we're horrified is because of this story, is because of what God said. At that point in time, human sacrifice was normal. Child sacrifice was normal. If you don't believe me, look at pagan worship. In fact, even 1,000 years later, look what the Romans were doing. Look what the Greeks were doing. Human sacrifice was normal. It was something that wasn't out of the ordinary. Now, Abraham had always said that Hashem is not like that. Okay, but maybe he was wrong. But you and I now, the reason that it's so antithetical to our essence, to our being, is because of what God says to Abraham at that final moment. He says, do not touch that child. Do not harm that child. That's not what we do with human beings. That's not what we do with our children. In other words, our revulsion to this story is actually the result of the message of the story, of the conclusion of the story. Are you with me on what I'm trying to say here? Does that make sense? In other words, human sacrifice and child sacrifice is absolutely, I don't even want to say off the table. It's like absolutely know as the lesson of the story. That's exactly what God's lesson was to Abraham. That's not the way. That's not the way. The fact that he was willing to go and suspending his own thought for God, okay, that's on some level to his credit that he was willing to follow God. But the message of the story is that's not what we do. And that's wrong. And that's the message. And that's why today it's easy to come after the fact, after having learned the lesson, and say, what was he thinking? He learned the lesson, and we learned the lesson from him. Donna.
Isaac was willing too, though.
Yeah. Isaac was willing to, right? And the message was, that's not how we do it. That's not how we do it.
Does that have a different meaning? I mean, does that give us different insight? Because he would have been the sacrifice.
So here's the thing. Here's the reality. For Isaac, his sacrifice would have been a one-time deal. Abraham would have had to live with that for the rest of his life. I'm not saying easier or harder. I'm just saying on one level, a one-time moment of sacrifice, even though it's the ultimate sacrifice, right? Obviously, but it's still one moment, as opposed to Avram, who would have to live with that knowledge for the rest of his life. That's why this is considered to be Abraham's test and not Isaac's test. Even though certainly you could say it was Isaac's test also, but the test of living with that.
That was kind of the gist of my question to last night.
I understood, yeah. I think he was really trying to say that he wanted to give a platform for people to express, and he listened and compassionate, but how they felt after that, living with that guilt of having now $1 million or millions of dollars because of a loved one who died, etc. He said, he doesn't. It seemed to me last night how quickly he pushed your question, like how quickly he pushed that away, that he did that himself, not wanting to allow another layer to enter into his, because he dealt with a lot of, as he said, he dealt with a lot of trauma from listening to all the stories, to deal with another layer of how people are going to feel about spending the money. He's like, no, I draw the line over there. I am not going to be thinking about that piece of it. That's how I understood. I understood your question. The way what I understood from his answer was that was his mechanism for. And
it also could have been maybe, in also another look at it is it's irrelevant. They've gone through so much. We're not even going to get into that. Let them be, kind of.
I think your question is a valid question. In other words, speaking to family members, how would they feel about it? How would, etc. I mean, it's a valid question, but it's something he clearly did not want to entertain. I don't think it was about not entertaining it last night. I think it was not a question he, back then and from that point on has not thought, not wanting to go there. Ray, go ahead.
Rabbi.
Yeah, Ray.
Didn't Isaac say to his father to bind him tightly so that he would?
Yeah. According to our sages, he actually participated in the preparation for it. But again, the thought was this would be the ultimate sacrifice, but the conclusion of the story is that's not the Jewish way. That's literally the lesson. So the fact that we're like, but that's not the Jewish way. How do you know? From this story, right? From this story. The story is the teaching. It's a very dramatic pedagogical technique, but it's a way to teach, right? Experiential. Yeah, Stan.
What's the story, the rationale, I guess, for the way that Abraham and Sarah traveled, in that whenever, he said frequently when we go on the road and we stay places, I'll tell the host that this is my sister.
Right.
Some truth. I think she was a stepsister.
Yeah.
What he said, but by the same token, I also read where he did that because in those days when you travel into hostile places, they would kill the husband and have their way with the wife.
Right.
But if she was just the sister, they would have the way with the wife and leave the brother alone.
Correct. So
help me with that.
Well, listen, what's wrong with a little self-preservation? Either way, listen, hold on 1 second. I'm not justifying it, and there are more layers of depth to it. and commentaries on this. But even from a simple perspective, if his calculation is either way, they're going to choose to do what they're going to do, and we can't stop them. But the one thing that we do have in our control is sparing my life. If she goes along with that and says, all right, let's at least, the one thing we can control is that you won't get killed. That seems like something. It's not like he's throwing her to the wolves. Again, the wolves are the wolves. He's not throwing her to the wolves are the wolves, right? Sparing himself. Now, there are other commentaries which I've explored in the past on this, because it does feel a little. I'm giving you a basic answer, but it does still feel a little, I'm going to use the word selfish, right? A little like, as long as I'm safe, we're good here, right?
But he did throw her to the wolves, because the wolves took her twice.
I know, but did he throw her, or did they forcibly take her?
This whole story is kind of tough. I read a little bit more about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I think I wouldn't handle the Netflix series of all this.
Listen, it's not for the faint of heart, but I will tell you that as much as you've read and as many commentaries as we've all explored, there are many more and so many different ways of explaining it. But I'm being very transparent here. Although I've studied this in previous years and in the past, and I've had, I know that I've encountered other perspectives on it that I think would help with the question, but I'm just being very honest. I haven't studied them recently, and I can't recall them in the moment. But there are definitely other explanations out there that make the story more palatable. Not making it, but explain it in a way that's a little bit more reasonable to our sensibilities. There are definitely ways to explain it and to understand it where maybe I need to do a better job of prepping that first. But listen, this is these are the stories as they appear. Look,
he was at least complicit. I mean, at least he was complicit in the arrangement.
Yeah.
At minimum.
It's
a tough story to. It's a tough story to.
It seems like she was also. I mean, she didn't say. It doesn't seem like she's saying like I don't want to go along with it. I don't think they had that relationship where he was telling her what to do. It's no indication that was the type of relationship. It seems like they were partners, in all the endeavors. That's the way that the stories sound. Again, if you take I know I'm only giving a very surface explanation and not a deeper rationale. But again, on the surface, if the calculus, if the cheshbon, if the calculation is she's going to be in danger anyway. The question is he going to be put into danger, or is there a way to prevent that danger? So the logic would be try to, whatever measures you could, whatever protection you could put. Whatever you can't, you can't. Now, if you're going to say, no, you should have said, I'm the husband, and then, protected her. If the calculation was that's not a possibility, then what's gained by that? What's gained is if he's still alive and around and can advocate in other ways, and after they release her, she has a husband to go back to. Again, I know it sounds horrible. I'm not trying to justify the evils, which, by the way, weren't done. In both cases, nothing happened. Just putting that out there, because God was protecting. But again, the calculation from the beginning might be she's in harm's way anyway. It's not that this creates it. There's at least one thing we can do. Is that horrible? I agree that it still feels a little one-sided. It seems like the only effort is to protect him, but maybe the understanding is what can you do to protect her? They try to hide her in a box. They try to smuggle her into the country without the official seeing, with Egypt. I mean, I don't know what else you do. You try to hide her because you know about the predatory approach. When she's discovered, I mean, do you jump in the fire or do you? I don't know. I hear the question. I'm not saying I have a good answer, but that's at least a basic understanding of the story. Are there better answers out there? I'm sure there are, and I'm sure I've studied them. But for now, this is the best I got. So I hope it's okay. I hope it gets us through Shabbos at least. Maybe by next week I'll have something. No promises, but maybe. All right. Good to see you all. I'm going to sign off. By the way, this is an earlier Shabbos because the clocks were changed. So candlelighting this week is like 5:22. So it's really, really getting close. I wish you all a good Shabbos, good health, and happiness, and peace, and tranquility, and no tests. Abraham got lots of tests. We should not have any tests. We passed all the tests. We don't need any more tests. Only blessings and goodness. All right. See you all. Have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Shabbos, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.